Welcome to Wake Up with Marci, a deep dive into self-discovery. I'm your host, Marci Hopkins, and this is the space where we get real about life, transformation, and finding our true selves. Hello, all, and welcome to Wake Up with Marci. I'm your host, Marci Hopkins, and I am so excited to embark on this journey with you. This is the podcast for women on a journey to self-discovery, seeking tips for parenting, mental wellness, and navigating life's transitions. Through expert interviews, real-life stories, and actionable advice, we're building a community where women can heal, grow, and thrive. Today, I have a phenomenal guest joining me, and that is Dawna Campbell, known as the Mind Whisperer. Dawna is a best-selling author, international speaker, and expert in reprogramming the subconscious mind for wealth, health, and success. She blends her background in finance with energy healing to help people clear blocks, shift their mindset, and step into limitless possibilities. In this episode, we'll explore how to release those limiting beliefs, align with abundance, and take control of your life in a powerful way. So grab your favorite drink, open your heart, because it's time to dive in and wake up to our true selves with Dawna Campbell. Welcome, Dawna.
Thank you for having me here with you today, Marci.
It's so great to have you. And man, do we go through some life transitions, right? It's just
We do.
inevitable.
We do.
It's how we get through them. And so I'm really grateful you're here to share your story and help us to shift our mindsets and learn how to do it. So thank you again for taking the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, speaking of transformations and dealing with hardships, you have done that.
Mhm.
Losing health, marriage, financial stability, and even facing a life threatening moment. How did
Yes.
you find the strength to not only survive, but to transform, to move through that?
Mm. One of the things that I realized, it was during that life moment where my life was always almost taken away from me,
Mm.
that I realized that another person could really truly never take away your divine essence, because your physical body might be gone, but your divine essence is always here. It's
Mhm.
always around, and that can never be extinguished. And when I had some of those moments of realization, I'm like, well, I want mine in my physical body. And so, and to be here. And so there was that piece on a spiritual level. The other side was, I was a single mom at that time. I did have two children with me. They were quite young. And, if something happened to me at that time, nobody would have known where I was or what would have happened or who would have found me. And, your children give you strength. There's a word here for it, that is not unparalleled to anything else. At least
Yeah.
that's how it's been for me.
Yeah. So tell us just a little bit about what it is that you went through
Yeah.
to make this transition for yourself.
Yeah. I was a financial advisor and a managing principal of an investment firm. So I was the sales manager and the compliance officer all in one.
Mhm.
And I was responsible for $500 million of other people's money.
Wow.
And the first thing that happened after about 8 years in that career was my health started failing me. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Doctors could not figure it out. I spent 2 years with Western medicine. They did remove a gallbladder. We did everything. And I had everything from a stomach viral infection to acute pancreatitis, but nobody could figure it out.
Mm.
Well, I went to a naturopathic doctor and learned that I couldn't digest food. It was simple. A
Wow.
$40 bottle of enzymes repaired the stomach lining. I could digest food. Who would have
Yeah.
thought? It was that simple. So that is what really opened me up to the lifestyle that I have today, because she said to me, because you couldn't digest food on the inside, there's something on the outside that you can't digest either. Well, as
Mm.
I was regaining my health, I realized what I couldn't digest on the outside of my world, of what I was blind to, was that my husband at the time had been unfaithful to me. So
And you
the
knew
marriage,
this. Did you know
I
that?
I didn't know it until I saw it,
Okay.
but I think it was there,
Mhm.
and I didn't have the realization of it because
Mhm.
I'm raising 2 kids. He's there. I'm working a full-time career. I have 4 offices in several states, so you just weren't paying attention.
Mhm.
If I go back and look, were there red flags? Probably. He was not home a lot. I had to
Yeah.
do everything, but I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't take the time to look at that. So the marriage ended because that wasn't who I was. And then I moved to an ashram. It's a spiritual living community because I'm like, whoa, these 2 things have me in common. I better figure out myself. And a
Yeah.
year later, I was with a spiritual partner, and he attempted to take my life.
Mm.
And, I moved back to where I started, and as I did, I became financially bankrupt and
Mhm.
literally starting over. But when I left that situation, I remember driving away for the next 6 hours with one prayer, and it was, "Oh, dear God, universe, if you're out there, keep me and my children safe, and I will dedicate my life to this healing pathway."
Mm.
And I haven't stopped ever since.
Yeah. You know, I have a lot of questions with that, but one thing I am gonna say is I had to do the same.
Mhm.
I I prayed to my God when I
Yeah.
was going through my difficult times, and I said, "If you get me through this, I will follow you, and
Mhm.
I will do anything to spread your word, and you will always be my shepherd." So, it's interesting
Mhm.
that you turn yourself over to the divine, God, universe, whatever it is that you wanna call it,
Mhm.
and you give yourself of service
Yes.
to others, and your life turns around. So that's real.
It's very real. Yes.
There's no mistake in that. There's no like,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. So I just find that so I don't know, intriguing and deep that we share that.
Mhm.
And it's just a really huge life lesson for those out there. You just gotta ask and believe in it.
Yes, you do. And what I found so interesting was I did get to safety. Things started turning around, and I stayed at a friend's house for a while. And I remember on the second day, I was sitting
Mhm,
there and I was writing, and I went, "Oh, I made a promise to God. I better
mhm.
go fulfill it." I don't know what I'm doing in this healing world. I was already a Reiki master doing some other things. I need new people in my life. And that's when I picked up the phone, made phone calls, and got introduced to more of a spiritual community. And that launched to where I'm at today. But it was on the second day. I'm like, I have to fulfill this promise.
Right.
And the universe, God, creator, does not let me forget. If I try to step away, nope, here you
No.
go. Here's the next layer. Oh, you want more? Let's make it bigger. Oh, you can do it a different way. Oh, let's add to it. And so it's been fun watching the expansion of that.
It is incredible, and so with that, I'd love to talk just a little bit about
Mhm.
letting people go in your life to allow others to come in. What is your
Yes.
ideas around that?
At the time, I had to let go of the person that I loved dearly who tried to take my life
Mm,
because I had to learn to love myself first.
mhm,
And I was studying a book. It happened to have been on energy centers. And on the heart energy center, it was talking about that you had to sometimes, with love, walk away because you have to love yourself first.
mhm.
And you have to love the other person enough that you can say, you need to go on your own part of the journey, but it does not take me with you. And that was a very interesting point in that book, which I thought about, wrote about a lot, and realized that I was going to have to walk away and I was going to have to put myself first because I couldn't do anything to change that situation. It had already been violated, it already went against my morals, values, and beliefs. of taking a life of another person. So I fulfilled that and I had to walk away. And sometimes you do.
Mhm.
But I think the lesson in there is love yourself first. And when you do love yourself first and you give and receive that love to you, then you have that ability to share it with others in a different way.
One of my the biggest thing that I love to talk about, and when I think about my healing journey and transformation, what the biggest thing that stood out for me was finding that self-love. Like,
Mhm,
what is that, right? I didn't know how to do that. We're not really taught how to do it. If you do and you're out there and you love yourself, like, that is phenomenal. And if you had the upbringing where you could find that for yourself, but I did not. So I didn't know how. Society doesn't teach us. We're always taught to think of others before ourselves, that it's selfish. But the reality is it's all within. The happiness you are seeking is within. And it's about knowing your worth. So being the best version of yourself so you can show up as that person and then compliment the other person instead of looking for someone else to always validate
mhm,
and fulfill your emptiness,
mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
And that's a hard thing to do, and that's a hard uh, thing to grasp. And
Mhm,
there are many steps that we can take to do that. So I want to talk about your spiritual journey.
mhm.
So and the connection between the emotional healing, energy, and financial abundance. So
Yeah.
for somebody out there, like, how can they start taking these steps? Like, what are the steps that you took, and what could you advise someone out there to do?
So, what I would say is the first step in everything is to have the awareness, to create the awareness. I do have a four-step process that I talk about. I call it dirt because we're really cleaning the dirt out of ourselves to have this new life. But the first step is discovery. You need
Mm,
to discover what you are feeling, creating that awareness. And so often I tell people to set a timer on a phone, and when it goes off, you assess how you feel on the inside. Because if you're in happiness and joy, ask yourself, what is greater? But if you're in frustration or you're stressed, worried, pressure, you have anxiety, depression, we want to change that because the
mhm,
only thing you're doing with those lower emotions is calling back those lower emotions to you. The second step is to identify the emotion that you're feeling. And this is the hardest step of it all because we will say things like, I am good.
mhm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, feeling good feels different to you than it does to me. What's the word? What's the feeling? What's the emotion? Um, and so you need to really describe it. Sometimes people will say, I'm stuck.
Mm,
Well, the emotion is stuck. What
mhm,
emotion is stuck? And so once you can identify frustration, anger, sadness, then we have the ability, the power to release it and transform it to something else. We don't want to stay stuck in stress. We don't want to be angry or upset or frustrated. So ask yourself, what is the opposite? Well, if you're at stress, you might want to have peace. So there's a simple breathing exercise. 3, 4, 5 minutes, you breathe in, you think the word peace. You breathe out, you think the word stress. Because when you breathe in, you're breathing in the good things the body needs, like oxygen. And when you breathe out the things the body doesn't need, carbon dioxide, and it takes out
mhm,
the toxins. So
mhm.
you do that breathing exercise, it'll transform your mind. In a matter of minutes, you'll feel a physiological change in your body. So those are just some of the quick little conscious steps that we can do in the moment that only take a few minutes to transform us from a lower vibrational feeling or energy to something higher that we truly want to experience and get back to that state of happiness.
So when you're talking about the energetic levels, this is something that I learned through my healing journey, right? When we're staying really a low vibration, when you're in grief or jealousy or anger or shame. And
Mhm.
then as we go up and we get to the state of happiness, joy, peace, Share with us what exactly that is. What is that vibrational state? What are we putting out and attracting and energy? What does that all mean?
So, we are electromagnetic beings. Energy runs up and down our body and in and out of our body, and it creates what science calls an energy field. Well, this energy field we read on not just ourselves, but on the people around us. And it's a subconscious type of reading. You can be walking down the street, you see somebody, you feel their energy field. You know if you're safe, you're going to say hello, start up a conversation, or maybe I shouldn't pass that person. I'm going to walk across the street now. We do it intuitively.
Mhm.
And it's all based on frequency and vibration. Well, because we're human people, we have emotions and feelings, and those emotions and feelings have that vibration and that frequency to it. So when we are in a lower state, the jealousy, the greed, the envy, the frustration, our energy field condenses down and stays closer to us and attracts that back to us because whatever signals we send out is what magnetizes back from the universe. But if
Mhm.
we're in that state of happiness or the joy or the bliss or the euphoria or the peace or the balance and all of those things that we want to have, our energy field expands out, goes further, and magnetizes those experiences back. And things happen in our lives like love, and we might have vision or ideas coming, synchronicity. All of those things happen because they're in a higher frequency.
Yeah.
So it all depends on our emotional state.
So when you started your relationship with your spiritual partner and
Yeah.
that ended up turning out in to a well, the outcome was not good.
Right.
Where were you at with that? Where were you when you went into that? So we
Yeah.
can kind of envision ourselves in those situations. Like
Right.
we get ourselves into these bad relationships. Did we attract that?
We do.
Okay.
And, simply put, yes. At the time, I remember I was asking for a spiritual partner. I didn't
Mhm.
know what that meant. In any given moment, it was complete heaven, or any given moment, it was complete hell. And
Mm.
I had that dichotomy and that duality, but I asked for it. Now we
Mhm.
resonate with the people in our lives, not only for our positive attributes, but also for the negative ones, because we have to resonate. And if you start making shifts and changes, releasing those negative attributes, the partner has then an energetic choice. Do I naturally shift and change and level up with the person? Or is there discord? We have to separate and go our different ways because I'm not going to step up and move up with you. So
Mhm.
for me, when those things were happening, I realized that I was not that lower frequency. He went more on the father's side. I started shifting and changing. The events happened. I left. I will say several years later, he did cross over due to brain cancer,
Mm.
ironically. So
Mm.
that's what he attracted into him.
Yeah.
Cancer resonates a lot to the energy of resentment, which is
Mhm.
like a tar type substance. But that was his pathway.
Mhm.
And I get to now live free from that because I've elevated up in my own frequency. So I can choose how I want to live now. Now that
Yeah.
I'm aware of all of this, now that I do it, now that I teach it. So I'm going to live my life abundantly, prosperously, with happiness, with love, with all of that other energy,
Yeah.
because that's how I want to live.
That's how you
Doesn't
want to
mean
live,
that, yeah. It
and
doesn't
thank
mean I don't
God.
get pulled out of my element because people
Yeah.
are around me and you're gonna resonate, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about how we can reprogram
Yeah.
our limiting beliefs
Mhm.
around anything in life. But a big one that you help with is money and abundance. But let's start with, how do we reprogram our limiting beliefs?
Yes. First, I will clarify that, for me to teach you the entire process, it does take 2 full days in a workshop, but I
Yeah.
can give you the nuts and bolts of it, of how that works. The first thing is, like I had mentioned earlier with that process, discovering, identifying, releasing, and transforming, and that breathing exercise. That's a real conscious way to do it. We have a 10% conscious reality. 90% of what we're experiencing is in the subconscious. So 90% of the time, you're not aware of the energy or the emotion that you are sending out that's attracting back to you. And that's where I come in to reprogram, because I do it on a subconscious level, not on a conscious level, because we want permanent change instantaneously 100% of the time. So, although the process is a little bit similar, we ask questions in a different way to understand what the subconscious is doing. Now, with money, what's really interesting was the words that we use to describe ourselves on a deep soul level: worthiness, value, appreciation, wanting to matter, having peace and balance, are words that describe our monetary system. Your net worth is, your portfolio value is, your assets appreciated, money matters. Do you want a piece of the pie? Did you balance your checkbook? So we use those words. We do.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
money is outside of us, and our soul, our essence is inside of us. So how you think and feel about yourself is how money energetically responds to you in life. So
Mm.
if you think and you're walking around and not feeling valued and unworthy, well, your net worth might not be very high and your bank account might not have a good value to it. It might be low. But when that starts shifting and changing and those things come in on that on that soul level in the reprogramming process, then what happens is you have more money in the bank. It's a
Mm.
symbiotic relationship.
Mhm.
I use money often as an example because it's real, it's tangible, and we can track numbers. So it gives us real results. It's a little bit harder when you say, finding your soulmate, or you want to have this immense peace about you, those types of things, because how do you really measure the peace when we're
Mm.
asking for a virtue or a quality like that? But money, we can see it because they're numbers, and it's in our bank account, on our credit cards, in our investments, in our home. It's everywhere. So,
Yeah.
so that's why money is a really good way, because when your money supply starts increasing, everything else in your life also increases.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I know for me, just because the way I was raised, the ideas I have about money or had, I'm getting better.
Mhm.
I didn't know my worth. Well, I didn't know my worth anyway. And then it's just as an entrepreneur, it's been very difficult to ask for money, and it's
Mhm.
starting to shift for me, but I think especially for women, that's very hard to do.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Part of it is programmed in our DNA. I will
Mhm.
say that, because of how our families were and our structures. And if you look at the history of our family, we farmed. How many
Mhm.
generations ago? You had children to help on the farm. It was survival mode. The man went out, the woman took care of the house, the kids, and the man took care of everything. Well, times are
Mm.
completely different today,
Yeah.
but those
Yeah.
old programs are in our DNA. They
Yeah.
really are. There's the history level. So, what the media puts out, what we get socially conditioned to, will also influence us on those beliefs. So, if we go back and look at the history, the stock market crashed, we went through a Great Depression, and then we had a polio outbreak. And then we
Mhm.
elected a president that had polio to restore, that whole story. So newspapers came out saying a nation crippled during the polio time. Well, if you
Mhm.
resonated with that belief, guess what?
Yeah.
You probably had polio, which is why one member of the family could have it and not the rest. Or some families did and some families didn't. So all of that also takes in consideration. And then our day-to-day experiences, our core direct experiences, and how we learn from our parents, from our grandparents, from our friends, from our teachers, from our siblings. And
Yeah.
then also on a soul level as well. At night
Mhm.
we dream. We learn during those dreams. I remember growing up, money was an embarrassment to my
Mm.
family. And it was a very
Having
interesting
money was?
word. Having money was an embarrassment, and not having money was an embarrassment. So
Mm,
money was just an embarrassment because my father lived through the depression and
mhm.
all of those things. He was born at that time. And so nobody had money. You saved everything just in case you needed it. He
Yeah.
still had his wedding boots, his cowboy boots, when he transitioned over 60 years later, just in case he needed them, even though he could never wear them because he didn't fit them anymore. But that was the mindset. But not having money was an embarrassment. Having to ask for money or for help was an embarrassment. And then when
Mhm.
there was money, it was an embarrassment because you weren't supposed to have it.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
That was interesting to work through.
Yeah, very interesting. And that takes me to asking
Ask
for help
Yeah.
and, you know, discovering how we can be more vulnerable and
Mhm,
ask for the help that we need, be okay with that.
mhm.
And then, and honestly, being vulnerable is really a sign of strength. So, can you speak to that more?
Yes, absolutely. Vulnerability allows the heart space to open for you to receive. And then when you receive, you have the opportunity to share it with others. And without that vulnerability, you keep yourself closed off. So asking for help
Mhm,
simply is I'm opening up my heart space to receive the help or assistance to come in the way that I am asking for it. A lot
mhm.
of times we see ourselves with vulnerability on the other side going, I don't want to ask for help because the times I asked for help, it didn't feel good. Well,
Yeah.
there's something inside that needs to change so that when the help does come, it does feel good. And sometimes the help doesn't do exactly what you wanted it to do or in the way that it needed to be done. So then we go into the mindset, well, I'm just going to do it myself
Yeah.
and have it done right the first time. But then that just opens up that heart space for communication.
Whoa, that's a hard one. Though that's a big word.
Yes, it does. Why did you do it this way when I asked for it that way? I'm just trying to understand. You're not attacking, we're understanding. We need to seek understanding. And what's so interesting about this is it goes back to our childhood. Many of my clients, when I ask them what they needed from their parents when they were really little, a
Mhm.
lot of them, I would say a good 80% said understanding. I just needed to understand. I needed someone to explain or to share or to tell me so I had understanding.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
parents weren't opening up their heart space to be vulnerable to explain to the child what was going on for them to have the understanding. They kept it away from them or closed off, or it was a topic like money in my house. We don't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about much of anything.
Mm-mm.
Um, and I think, it's kind of like that generational cycle, right? Like I wasn't taught that. It was not something you spoke about. I'm not comfortable speaking about it, but these are things that are so vital that we open the conversation up about and for our children to learn maybe
Yeah.
why we're even, thinking about something the way that we are, or we're uh, in enforcing a rule in a certain way that we are, or spending money the way that we are. That's what I'm taking from this, that it's important to open up that conversation, and as a partner in anything.
Mhm.
Mhm,
Absolutely. Because it's that communication that gives the understanding or the way to move through the situation at hand, understand where the other person is coming from. And that's another key to communication is not just looking at it from your point of view, but also looking at it from the other person's perspective. And that is
mhm.
incredibly hard. It's
It
like
is.
putting yourself in their shoes to have that different context, to have that different understanding. And then once you have that, then you can start moving forward and making changes together of what needs to happen.
Hmm. So, how could we, as parents, let's say, give our children the upper hand so that maybe they don't have these negative, this negative programming, the negative thoughts subconsciously around money?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it starts when you're really little.
Hmm.
So you can have the conversations later, but from the time that you are born, and actually when you're in the womb, you're connected by an umbilical cord. So every thought, feeling, and emotion your mom is feeling, and then the DNA, because of how you're connected with your birth father, you feel all of that, and it automatically starts programming you with that DNA blueprint.
Mm.
So that's first and foremost to be aware of. And what happened during those 9 months. After you're born, just like learning, a baby learning to reach up and grab something, learning to eat, learning to sit up, learning to roll over, it's all an energy learning in the subconscious because of how the brain works with the neurons and how it all rapid fires. Well, everything that's going on in the household during that time is also programming the child. So if the child is in the living room and you're fighting with your spouse about money, that child just got programmed how to fight with money, even though it can barely crawl and doesn't talk. So later in life, what happens is it already knows how to argue about money. I've looked
Mm.
and I've seen this with different families. I have a friend of mine, her daughter um, had a child, single parent, the way she communicates with them energetically in the room. And this child is like wild
Mm.
versus my son who has a child. They're always happy. They're always in a positive state. They've been very mindful of everything. And this child does not do anything but smile.
Mm. Hmm.
So it happens. And one is only three, one is only one.
Mm.
So so we are programming from those early ages. So it's not so much in the conversations later as it is in those first formative years, because by the time you're 7, 8, or 9, you have already formulated all of your beliefs and your operating program of how you're going to interact with things. Can it be changed in the future? Absolutely. But by
Mhm.
7, 8, or 9, you're watching those things play out. So look at your young children and go, what happened then?
Oh, they are absorbing everything. Absolutely. And it's so interesting you said that because I just recently read that your child's in the other room, you're arguing about something, and you think the child has no idea what's going on,
They know
but they are
everything.
truly absorbing everything that's happening,
They do.
and it is affecting them.
Yep. Just like
Yeah.
us. We
Yeah.
went through the same process too. Whatever your parents did when we were
Sure.
little, that set the stage for us as adults. So we learn from it, we grow from it, we update, we make our changes,
Mm.
and then we have the next generation.
It's so, and you know what? I just recently found out because my mother and father, my mother had me when she was 19. And so my mother and father, well, they ended up getting married after I was born, just to try to make something work, to try to make the family.
Mhm.
And they fought about money. That's ended it ultimately why they ended up getting a divorce a year later because of how controlling my father was around money.
Mhm.
And so that's so interesting that I would have been absorbing all of that. My grandparents were raised in the Depression. I was with them a majority of my life. And I mean, it's just, I just think about I'm getting better, but I've always been so uncomfortable around money. But yet, I always said growing up I was going to be rich.
Right.
So
I love it.
I'm manifesting that one.
I love it. I love it. You are already changing already on a subconscious level without you even knowing how to do the process.
So you have so much valuable information and teaching. So share with us about the projects, your book, what's coming up for you,
Yes.
because I mean, people need to find you and connect with you, Dawna.
Yes. Um, some of the upcoming projects, I do have a book. It's called The Abundant Soul. It's actually a series of books. The first one is Creating Inner Wisdom for Financial Success, and it follows a storyline of a character named Crystal and how she starts learning about her inner abundance. The second book is going to be releasing coming out this May, and it's in the Abundant Soul series, and it's called Harnessing the Mind's Power for Mental Wellness. So, how do we create this balance with our inner and our outer world, not just financially, but within ourselves, within our own mind? So, that's going to be a lot of fun when that releases.
I love it.
Um, Other projects. As a healer, I was shown that I'm going to be growing and expanding besides speaking and writing and all of the other things I do. I also produce movies and films with the Los Angeles Tribune and documentaries on various topics. And so we have the Pillars of Power coming out. It is called, the subtitle is The Hidden Secret Behind Achieving Greatness. So I've been out interviewing all kinds of amazing people to uncover what is that hidden secret.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And you have a big event coming up, don't you? In
Oh,
April?
yeah, there's a lot of events coming up. I do have an Abundant Soul conference in April. It'll be in St. Petersburg, Florida, the Abundant Soul Conference, where we showcase local people in the community with their areas of expertise, with what they do in the healing, spiritual, metaphysical business world. It's important to put the business in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my team and I come in. We also speak from stage, and you'll learn and get to see a live demonstration from me of how fast everything can shift and change in that subconscious, and see it visually with your eyes and have that own experience for yourself in the audience.
So, can you give the listeners a little bit of insight, or maybe we could do one of those little shifts right now? Could we do that?
We could, if you are willing to be a volunteer.
I volunteer.
So the first step in this, when we're up on stage, I will have a person come up who volunteers from the audience, and I will show how to do a muscle test so we can see how the energy field measures so people can see this. But here they're going to be able to see your face, the shifts, the transitions, and how that all works. So the very first thing I need to know, Marci, is what would you like to change in your life? What would you like to have better?
Well, the biggest struggle I have right now is it would this be something to change for myself?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to learn how to better communicate with my son and allow him to be his authentic self, to feel comfortable enough to open up with me.
Okay.
What could I do to help him do that?
So step one, we're creating the awareness of what we want, and it's better communication with your son. Now we have to discover and identify the feelings and emotions. So I'm going to ask a couple of different questions.
Mhm.
How does it feel right now communicating with your son? What feeling comes up for you when you communicate?
I have some frustration
Mhm.
because I feel like he's closed off.
Okay. So there's frustration. That's what we know what we need to change. I'm just going to ask the opposite question of that for now,
Mhm.
just to get an idea and a benchmark. What emotion or feeling would you like to have communicating with him?
Mm, I would like to feel comfort in connection with him.
Okay, comfort and connection. So if we were going to change this on a conscious level, you would take the breathing exercise, breathe in comfort and connection, and you would breathe out frustration. That's on the 10% conscious level. We're going to go to the subconscious. Are you ready? We're going to go a
Mhm.
few layers deeper.
Awesome.
So for that frustration, when you feel the energy of frustration, where is it at in the body?
I think it's all in here. More
Okay, in
maybe
the
the heart
gut,
space.
heart, solar,
Mhm.
soul seat area. Thy-
Mhm.
thymus, yes. Okay, so when you feel the energy of frustration sitting on top of your heart, when was the first time you remember feeling that in your life? And you might have been really little as a child. Pick an age. There's no right or wrong answers here, just whatever age that pops into your mind.
I'll go with 8.
Yeah. So now
Mhm.
we're going to identify what happened at age 8. What happened that you felt frustration on your heart space at age 8?
Not being heard or being able to communicate at that time.
Yeah. So who
Mhm.
could not hear you?
Nobody.
So
I
nobody
felt.
could hear you,
Mhm.
and you had an inability to communicate. When you are not able to communicate, what did that feel like?
You feel invisible.
Invisible.
Mhm.
And what's the worst thing about feeling invisible?
You're not there. You don't feel like you count.
Don't feel like you count. So now we're to the subconscious belief
Mhm.
and the subconscious energy. What does feeling like you don't count feel like to you?
It hurts. It feels like nobody cares, like it doesn't really matter if I exist. It's painful. It hurts. It's sadness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not existing, pain, sadness. What would you rather have?
Well, I'll always go with happiness.
And what happens when you have that happiness? What does happiness feel like to you?
Light. I feel light. I
Mhm.
feel, you know, I feel a higher energy. I feel like I wanna laugh. I feel, uh, vibration and tingling throughout me. Um,
Mhm.
it's like a natural high.
Okay. So this is where the little mind whispering technique comes in at,
Mhm.
because you're not going to have to make the change. I can do it with you for you. You're not going to have to do the breathing exercise or anything like that. So,
Mhm.
would you like to know what it feels like to have that happiness, that natural high, the tingliness inside because you are light, free from and without the frustration, without feeling hurt, without the pain, knowing that you do matter and that, yes, you do exist. You have a voice and it is heard. Yes.
Yes.
And I'm just energetically, this would be a whole conversation on quantum physics, allowing that to shift and change within you as you receive it. So go ahead and take a big breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. We're going to ask just for the clearing. Is that okay? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to go back and do a couple of little checkpoints, making
Mhm.
sure you shift and changed. When you go back to the age 8 and you look at the scenario that you shared earlier, what does that look like and feel like to you now?
I don't feel the heaviness of what I felt then, the
Mhm.
sadness. Mhm.
Yeah. You look brighter and your skin looks brighter all around you, and your smile's different than what it
Mhm.
was before we started. So the heaviness is gone. Sometimes there's other emotions and things come up. We just repeat the process, make sure everything gets cleared. This is an example. So know
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
When we go back to the heart space right in here, what does that feel like to you now?
Oh, I feel a little tingle.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's different.
Yeah.
And when we think about communicating with your son,
Mhm.
what does that look like?
I'm gonna open myself up more so he can feel comfortable to open up himself.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like I need to do. I mean,
Yeah. So when you're there,
Mhm.
Because we shifted the energy, the heaviness is off. Was something associated to age 8 that is leaving. This new
Mhm.
energy is coming in. And so when you sit down to speak with him, you should have that little tingle inside,
Mm.
not what was there before. Now you're going to
Yeah.
go through a sleep cycle. The subconscious keeps working and it will reprogram everything else in the body with this new set of instructions that we just gave it energetically. And
Mm.
so more will happen. You'll feel even different again by tomorrow morning. But that's the real basic process for a live example here of how that works. It's that fast. It's that quick.
Thank
Um,
you.
in private session work, we go deeper and we get into details and things. We don't do those in the examples just because
Yeah.
there's privacy.
Very yeah, it's safe private place for that.
Exactly.
So, to wrap up, 2 things. 1, what's a final piece of wisdom or advice that you'd like to give the listeners or those watching? And then, of course, where can we find you?
So, a final piece of advice is a mantra that I wrote for myself years ago when I was going through all of those other things that I went through. Um, and it is trust and you will see, believe and you will know, have faith, all is well, follow your heart, and spirit will lead you.
Mm.
And where to find me, you can just put my name into Google and I will pop up. But bookadonna.com, I'm on Instagram at Dawna Campbell Official. You can go to donnacampbell.com. It's all linked to my name. It's
And I
pretty
will
simple.
add all of that information below, definitely. And I want to add that mantra for everyone because
Yes.
that felt good.
Mhm.
I like that one.
Yes.
And I'm just so grateful that you were here today. And I feel like we could just continue to talk. And
Yes. Thank
I
you.
would love to have you on again. And let's talk about the quantum physics. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by that.
Let's do it.
And it's so real. I mean,
It
I'm
is.
becoming more and more connected to that too. So thank you again, Donna, for all
Thank
that
you.
you do.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Mm.
Absolutely. And
You're a true
I want
blessing to the world.
oh, thank you, Donna. So are you. So are you. And I want to thank everyone that tuned in today, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on YouTube. I am grateful for you. And if today touched you, please share with someone that needs to hear this message. Subscribe, like, leave a comment or a review to help grow this community and spread the word. I will see you all next week as we take a deep dive into self discovery. Bye bye and have an incredible week.